Have you ever wondered what truly makes a man wise and deeply cherished in his community? In today's captivating video, we delve into the ancient wisdom shared by a 72-year-old woman from a small village in Azmir. She unveils profound insights into the deeper meaning behind intimacy secrets that transcend mere physical connection and have the power to forge relationships that last a lifetime. But that's just the beginning. We'll explore how a simple act of devotion can transform not just personal relationships, but entire communities. These aren't just stories, they're timeless lessons that could forever change how you perceive love and connection. Stay with us until the end to uncover how embracing this wisdom can enrich your own life. You'll learn valuable insights into building deeper connections, nurturing respect, and fostering harmony in your relationships. Trust me, you won't want to miss the invaluable lessons woven into this extraordinary narrative. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it in the serene village of Azmir, nestled amidst rolling hills and tranquil landscapes that stretched endlessly to the horizon. There lived a woman whose wisdom transcended generations. Her name was Madame Laura, and she was a figure of grace and quiet strength, a living testament to the power of experience and the beauty of life's journey. With her snow-white hair cascading softly around her weathered face, she embodied both time and tranquility. Her eyes, still so bright and full of life, twinkled with the knowledge and secrets she had collected over many decades. They sparkled like the stars in the night sky, each glimmer holding a story, a lesson, a piece of the wisdom she had earned through her long, eventful life for the people of Azmir. Madame Laura was not just a woman. She was an institution, a guide, a keeper of the village's soul. Her home, though simple and humble, carried the aura of a sacred sanctuary built of weathered stone and timber. It stood at the edge of the village, surrounded by ancient trees that whispered with the winds, telling stories of the past. Every visitor felt the peace that lingered in the air around her home, as if time itself slowed down when one ENT entered her presence. The scent of burning cedar often wafted through the air, calming the minds and spirits of those who sought her counsel. On one particularly cool autumn afternoon, a group of young people gathered outside Madame Laura's home. Their hearts were filled with curiosity and yearning for the kind of wisdom that only she could provide. They had heard many stories of her teachings, of the way she spoke with a depth that could touch the soul, and they longed to experience her guidance firsthand as the sun began to set, casting long shadows and bathing the village in a soft golden glow. The group with eager anticipation stepped through her gate and knocked at her door. Madame Laura greeted them with a warm, welcoming smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she ushered them inside her home. Much like the woman herself, was a space of simplicity and serenity. The furnishings were modest, but each piece seemed to carry the weight of memory and history. The wooden table at the center of the room was worn with age, its surface marked by the passage of countless conversations, shared meals, and heartfelt exchanges. It was a table that had borne witness to the joys and sorrows of generations, and now it would witness yet another gathering of hearts and minds. The young people took their seats around the table, the anticipation almost palpable in the air. They felt as though they were on the precipice of learning something profound, something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Madame Laura sat at the head of the table, her presence commanding yet gentle with her usual calm and grace. She began to speak, her voice soft but powerful, like a gentle breeze that carried with it the scent of the earth and the wisdom of the ages. She shared stories of life and love, of hardship and triumph, and of the lessons that had shaped her into the woman she had become. Her words were not just words, they were windows into the soul of humanity itself, filled with emotion and meaning. The young people hung on her every word, their hearts swelling with the gravity of the wisdom being imparted. It was as though time itself had paused to listen to her speak, each moment stretching into eternity among the group. However, there was one young man whose curiosity burned brighter than the rest. He had always been bold, never one to shy away from asking the difficult questions. He respected Madame Laura deeply and felt that if anyone could give him the answer to the question that had been nagging at his heart, it was her. And so, with a mix of hesitation and courage, he cleared his throat and asked Madame Laura, "May I ask something very personal?" Her eyes twinkled with intrigue as she turned her full attention toward him. "Of course, my dear," she replied gently, her voice filled with warmth. "Ask whatever is on your heart. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment one below to let me know that you are still here with me." Taking a deep breath, the young man asked, "What is the deeper meaning behind the act of oral intimacy? I've heard so much about it, but I want to understand what it truly means." A heavy silence fell upon the room. The other young people shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how Madame Laura would respond to such a personal question. But Madame Laura's expression remained calm, her smile never faltering. She understood the vulnerability it took to ask such a question, and she met it with compassion. Her eyes softened as she leaned forward, folding her hands on the table. "I am so glad you asked," she said, her voice filled with a deep sincerity. "This is not an easy topic to discuss, but it is one of profound importance." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle before continuing. "You see the act. You speak of oral intimacy is often misunderstood in today's world. Many see it as merely a physical act, one rooted in desire or pleasure. But in truth it goes far deeper than that. This act, when done with love and respect, is a sacred exchange, a gesture of profound vulnerability and trust." She began to tell a story, one that had been passed down through her family for generations. It was a story from the time of their ancestors, who believed that intimacy in all its forms was a reflection of the soul's connection to another. Oral intimacy, she explained, was seen as a way for a man to honor the divine feminine energy within his partner. It was a gesture of reverence, devotion, and humility. In those ancient times, men who truly understood the sacredness of this act were revered within their communities. They were seen as protectors of the feminine, as guardian of the life force that women carried within them. Men who embraced this act with respect, Madame Laura continued, were seen as courageous. They were not just lovers. They were seen as wise and brave souls who understood that true intimacy is built on mutual respect, understanding, and trust. They honored the feminine energy that gives life to the world, and in doing so, they were elevated in the eyes of their communities. Her words hung in the air, like a soft melody, filling the room with a sense of reverence. The young people were captivated, their minds and hearts wide open to the profound meaning behind her story. She spoke not just of the physical act, but of the emotional and spiritual connection that it symbolized. Madame Laura's eyes sparkled as she delved deeper into the story in our ancestors' time. Intimacy was not something to be taken lightly. It was a sacred bond, a language that went beyond words. The men who understood this knew that their role was to honor their partners, to protect and cherish the feminine energy that is the source of life itself. She paused, her voice softening as she added, and the women in turn felt deeply respected, seen and valued. This act was a way for men to show their devotion and their willingness to put their partner's needs and comfort above their own. It was not about domination or control, but about creating a space where love could flourish, where both partners could feel truly seen and cherished. The room was silent, the young people hanging on her every word, deeply moved by the emotional weight of her story. Madame Laura's voice grew even softer, almost a whisper as she shared her final thoughts. True intimacy, she said, is a dance. It's not about taking, but about giving. It's about vulnerability, about trust, and about showing the other person that they are worthy of your deepest respect and devotion. When a man understands this, when he truly grasps the sacredness of this act, he becomes more than just a lover. He becomes a protector of the heart, a guardian of the soul. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze sweeping over the young people gathered before her. This is what our ancestors knew. This is what they understood. And it is a lesson that I hope you all carry with you as you move forward in your lives. Honor the people you love. See them, cherish them, for true intimacy is the foundation of every deep and meaningful connection. Tears glistened in the eyes of some of the young people as they sat in silence, the depth of Madame Laura's wisdom sinking in the bold young man who had asked the question felt his heart swell with a newfound understanding. He realized now that intimacy was not just about physical closeness. It was about emotional and spiritual connection. It was about respect, devotion, and love in its purest form. As the evening wore on, the group slowly dispersed, each person leaving Madame Laura's home with a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. They had come seeking wisdom, and they had received so much more than they had ever expected. And as Madame Laura sat alone in the quiet of her home, her heart was filled with a deep sense of peace. She knew that her words had touched them, that the wisdom she had shared would live on in their hearts, just as it had been passed down through the generations before them. At that moment, she felt the presence of her ancestors, their spirits smiling upon her, proud that the sacred traditions of love, respect, and devotion were still being honored even in the modern world. As the evening sun gently surrendered to the velvet embrace of night, the village seemed to breathe with a new energy. A thick twilight mist curled through the narrow streets, wrapping the village in a blanket of serene stillness. Yet inside Madame Laura's humble cottage, the air buzzed with a different kind of intensity. The conversation between the group of eager youths and the enigmatic Madame Laura had blossomed into something far more profound than they had expected. What had begun as a casual chat about love and respect had quickly transformed into an impassioned discussion that left the room humming with curiosity, tension, and wonder. Madame Laura, with her deep, knowing eyes and soft yet commanding voice, had shared a story, one filled with raw emotion that touched each of them deeply. It was a story of love, yes, but more importantly, a story of respect. Not just the respect that comes from polite words or gestures, but the kind of respect that grows from a place of deep understanding and empathy. The room had fallen silent as her tale unfolded, the weight of her words sinking into their hearts like stones, into still water, sending ripples through their souls. But as the night deepened, so did the hunger for more wisdom, more knowledge, more understanding of the powerful forces that bound people together in love and intimacy. Driven by this overwhelming desire, the youths decided they needed to seek the wisdom of the elders, those who had lived through decades of love loss and life's complexities. The older generation held stories like treasures, each one a gem of experience that could offer answers to the questions that burned within them. The group made their way through the quiet village streets, the moonlight casting long silver shadows over the cobblestones. They soon arrived at the modest home of Helio, a respected elder whose gentle demeanor and vast knowledge made him a revered figure in the community. Helio was known not just for his wisdom, but for his ability to weave stories that stayed with you long after you heard them like melodies. You couldn't forget his home, though simple radiated warmth. The flicker of a fire could be seen from the window, and the scent of burning wood greeted them as they knocked on his door. Helio welcomed them, inside his weathered face breaking into a soft smile. His home was cozy, with shelves lined with books and mottos from a life well lived. A fire crackled invitingly in the hearth, its light dancing across the room, casting shadows that seemed to move in rhythm with the soft crackle of the flames. The youth, slightly nervous but filled with anticipation, sat down eager to hear what this wise man had to say. Helio, sensing their curiosity, took his time. Before speaking, he gazed into the fire for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts from the glowing embers. When he finally began, his voice was slow, deliberate, and filled with a richness that came from years of understanding. He spoke not just with his words, but with his heart, and each word seemed to carry the weight of generations of wisdom. You see, he began, his voice low but clear. Intimacy is far more than what most people think it is. It's not just about physical closeness, true intimacy. It's about connection, deep emotional connection. It's about knowing someone so fully and allowing them to know you that even the smallest gesture becomes a language of love. The room fell utterly silent as the youths hung on to his every word. There was something almost sacred about the way Helio spoke, and they could feel it in the air, a kind of reverence that made them understand that what they were hearing was more than just advice. It was a gift. Helio continued, his voice weaving a tapestry of stories. He spoke of the men in the village, men who would return home after long days of working in the fields, their bodies weary, but their spirits full of love for their families. These men, Helio explained, they didn't see into why as something separate from the rest of their lives. It wasn't a duty or a chore. It was a way of expressing love and care, even after a hard day's work. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. He paused for a moment, the firelight reflecting in his eyes, and the youths could see that this was a man who had lived what he was speaking of. His stories weren't just abstract ideas. They were lived, experiences, memories etched into his soul. He began to share examples, painting pictures of husbands who, despite their exhaustion, would go out of their way to show affection to their wives. It wasn't about grand gestures. He said it was the small things, holding her hand at the end of a long day, sharing a quiet moment by the fire, or simply listening to her speak about her day. Helio spoke of the importance of physical closeness, not just for passion, but for connection. Acts like oral intimacy, he said gently, are not merely physical. They're acts of devotion, ways of saying I love you when words simply aren't enough. They show that you value the other person, not just for their body, but for who they are, their heart, their soul. His words washed over the young listeners like a soothing balm, unraveling their preconceived notions about intimacy. They began to understand that it was not just about physicality, but about trust, vulnerability, and a deep emotional bond that could only grow stronger with time. The stories Helio told weren't just about love, but about a profound respect for one another, a respect that was built brick by brick through years of shared experiences, understanding and affection. As Helio continued, he shared how these men would go beyond their daily routines to nurture their relationships. It's easy to get caught up in the tasks of the day, he said, but a marriage, a relationship, it requires tending like a garden. You can't just plant it and walk away. You have to water it, nurture it, and give it sunlight. And in the same way, you have to nurture your bond with your partner. He spoke of the unspoken gestures that strengthen these bonds, how a look, a touch, a smile could convey more love than 1,000 words. He told of how these men understood that love wasn't something that could be taken for granted. It had to be cared for, tended to. Cherished. The youths, sitting around the fire, were spellbound. They had never thought of intimacy this way before. They had always seen it as something simpler, something less nuanced. But now, thanks to Helio's words, they saw it for what it truly was. A deep, sacred connection that went far beyond the physical, something that intertwined their very souls as the night wore on and the fire began to burn lower. Helio shared one final piece of wisdom, his voice soft but filled with emotion. True understanding, he said, isn't about figuring out the mysteries of life. It's about treasuring the connections we have with others. It's about showing love in ways that words can't always express. and knowing that those small acts of kindness, those moments of tenderness, are what make life beautiful. The room was silent as he finished the crackle of the fire. The only sound, the youth sat in quiet reflection, their hearts full of the wisdom they had just received. They realized that they had come seeking answers, but what they had found was something far greater, an understanding of the true meaning of love, respect, and intimacy that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. They left Helio's home that night with a sense of reverence, their hearts full of gratitude, and their minds buzzing with the depth of the lessons they had learned as they walked back through the village. The stars twinkling overhead, they knew they had been forever changed by the stories of love, respect, and devotion passed down through the generations under the serene, silvery glow of the moon. The youths left Helio's home, their spirits lifted and their minds filled with the weight of newfound wisdom. What they had learned that evening was more than just a lesson. It was a life-altering revelation that would reshape their understanding of love, relationships, and the very essence of human connection. As they walked through the quiet village streets, the cool night air seemed to carry with it the whispers of the wisdom they had gained, and they could feel the profound change stirring within them. The words of Helio and Madame Laura had planted seeds in their hearts, seeds that would soon blossom into something far greater than they could have imagined. The depth of the teachings they had received resonated on an emotional level they had never before experienced. They realized that love, true love, was not some fleeting emotion or a series of grand romantic gestures. No, it was something much more enduring, something that required generosity, not only of material things but of the heart and spirit. It required unwavering dedication, a commitment that went beyond words and promises and extended into everyday actions. And perhaps, most importantly, love meant striving for the happiness of another, sometimes even at the expense of one's desires. This, they learned, was the essence of true love. A love that could weather any storm and grow stronger with each passing day. In the days and weeks that followed, the youths found themselves reflecting on these lessons constantly as they shared their newfound understanding with others. The wisdom began to spread like ripples on the surface of a still pond, reaching every corner of the village. What had started as a quiet conversation in the dimly lit home of Helio and Madame Laura was now evolving into a cultural shift, a transformation in how love and relationships were viewed by the entire community. The younger generation, once captivated by the more superficial aspects of intimacy, by passion, excitement, and fleeting moments, began to embrace something much deeper. They realized that love was not just about what was seen on the surface, but about the emotional and spiritual connections that ran beneath it like roots that held two people together through the hardest of times. Marriage, once regarded as a societal expectation or an arrangement of convenience, was now understood as a sacred union built on mutual respect, empathy, and a profound emotional bond with time. The effects of this wisdom were visible in every home. The women of the village in particular began to feel a profound shift in how they were treated. Once taken for granted in their roles as wives and mothers, they now felt valued and appreciated in ways that touched their souls. Their partners, inspired by the teachings of Helio and Madame Laura, began to express their love not just through obligatory gestures, but through heartfelt actions that truly made them feel cherished. A warm smile over breakfast, an unexpected touch of the hand, a quiet moment of gratitude. These small, seemingly insignificant acts began to take on a whole new meaning. They became expressions of a love that was alive and thriving, growing stronger with every passing day. The gestures of love within the village homes were no longer just traditions passed down from one generation to the next. They became living symbols of the unity, harmony, and connection that held families together. Whether it was a simple act of sharing a meal, offering a kind word after a long day, or sitting together in silence under the stars, These moments of tenderness became the true measure of a relationship. Strength, the men too began to see that the grandiose acts of love they once thought necessary were far less important than the smaller, quieter acts of everyday kindness. They learned that love was not something to be shown off or declared in loud, dramatic ways, but something to be lived and felt in every moment, in every action. As the years went by, the couples in the village found themselves rediscovering each other in ways they never thought possible. The teachings of the elders guided them to new depths in their relationships, showing them that love was a journey that never truly ended but grew richer and more meaningful over time. They began to realize that even in the simplest acts of love, there was great power, a word of encouragement, a shared laugh, or even the gentle brushing away of a tear. These were the moments that carry the most weight, the moments that left an indelible mark on their hearts. Helio and Madame Laura watched all of this unfold with quiet joy. They had seen their village change before their very eyes, and they knew that the transformation was not just in how people treated each other, but in how they viewed love itself. The lesson they had shared with the youths had not only been heard, but had been embraced and absorbed into the very fabric of the village's daily life. Love was no longer just a word, an idea, or a fleeting feeling. It had become a way of life. It had become something sacred, something to be nurtured and cherished every single day. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. What brought the greatest joy to Helio and Madame Laura was not seeing grand displays of affection or hearing declarations of love shouted from rooftops. It was seeing the small, tender moments, the quiet exchanges between a husband and wife, the gentle support offered by one partner to another in times of difficulty, the deep understanding that seemed to pass between two people without a single word needing to be spoken. They knew then, as they had always known, that the real strength of love lay in these moments. It was not in the flowers or the gifts or the dramatic gestures, but in the smallest acts of care, kindness, and thoughtfulness. The village became a place of warmth, compassion, and connection, where love was no longer something to be spoken of in hushed tones or saved for special occasions. It was something lived and breathed by every couple, every family, and every individual. The wisdom of the elders had become the guiding light for the community, showing them that the greatest love stories were not the ones filled with drama or spectacle, but the ones built on a foundation of trust, respect, and everyday kindness. Helio and Madame Laura, their hearts full, continued to teach the younger generations, knowing that as long as love was cherished in its truest form, the village would remain a place of harmony, unity, and strength. The legacy of their teachings would live on, carried in the hearts of every person who understood that love at its core is not about what we receive, but about what we give freely, selflessly, and with an open heart. As we come to the end of this beautiful story of love, unity, and transformation, we invite you to reflect on the wisdom shared here. What have you learned so far? What is one thing that resonated deeply with you, something you plan to bring into your own life, whether in your relationships or how you express love and care to those around you? We would love to hear from you. So please share your thoughts in the comments below if you enjoyed this video and found it insightful. Don't forget to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Your engagement helps us continue bringing more meaningful content to you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing how these lessons have touched your life.